Wireless Excellence. We're here today on a very special day. So I'd like to introduce ourselves and maybe explain why today is special. So with me here, I'm Stephen Patrick, by the way, the CEO of CableFree. I have David Evans, Senior Manager of the business.
Yeah. So I've been here for a number of years now, and I see up the team that work on the innovations and the products that we produce for our customers globally.
And with us also is Anita, who's with one of our channel partners. Anita, if you could introduce yourself and the nature of our partnership.
I'm Anita Mystery, and I'm from Cogent Distribution. We've been a partner for the last 12 months and on a very exciting journey. May I just add by saying a very happy birthday to you.
Oh, thanks very much, Anita. And that's very special indeed. So which birthday is it? It's our 30th. CableFree, or Wireless Excellence, is 30 years old today. So exactly this day, 30 years ago, the company was founded on a piece of paper with a dream behind it.
And what was that dream?
Well, many of us were very young people back then, but we had a dream of connectivity, specifically wireless connectivity. And remember, 30 years ago, most of the world was connected with things like dial-up internet. There was no Wi-Fi. Cellular phones were like complete bricks, which used analog signals. So we had a dream that we were going to do modern digital wireless communication. Now, sat here in 2026, that might seem very obvious, an obvious thing to do. But sat there in the late 90s, that was disruptive. So we went to market with this idea of using free space optics. That was our first technology. And why choose that? Because microwave is very complex and difficult. Free space optics offered a new thing. We could do extremely high speeds. Our initial product, first out the gate, could do 500 megabits per second in a world of dial-up internet. So we'd go to customers and say, guess what? Rather than digging up the road between your offices, disrupting the streets and the traffic, or ripping up the nice pristine lawns, you can have just two boxes and beam data between them and replace all of that fixed infrastructure. And the reception was enormous. It was quite dramatic. People realized you could do that. Now then, of course, people said, well, how can I trust it? Where's the data? Where's the backup? So almost every time we'd do an installation, it would be almost a proof of the technology and ability. But as the company grew and our experience and the customer base, we could go along confidently and say, well, here's a list of people who have already trusted this technology to do this. And of course, our skills and experience grew with it.
And so what is next? What's for the next, I guess, 30, 20 years? You know, what's the next visionary steps?
Well, indeed. So 30 years in wireless is actually a colossal amount of time. So we started, as I mentioned, with one technology. And we grew very quickly. With free space optics alone, we grew at 100% per year. We actually doubled the company turnover 5 successive years from startup, which is almost unheralded. In fact, to do that just off a seed round of funding is quite amazing. But we realized very quickly that one technology was like being a very large fish in a small pond. The market for free space optics is still quite modest globally. So we diversified and we realized we could turn our technological skills to building a much larger and more attractive offering. So we added radio, microwave, millimeter wave, and now, of course, in this latest chapter, mobility, 4G and 5G solutions, which we developed from the ground up here in Oxford. So the path ahead is an extension of this, is looking at the world today, which of course is a hyper-connected digital world full of gadgets, devices, now with robots and IoT. It's clear that the demand for connectivity will only grow, and in terms of capacity, latency, reliability, seamless global coverage, and of course including machines as well as humans in the mix.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit about that, about the machines. That's an interesting comment that you've just made there.
Well, already in the UK, it turns out there are more machines connected than people. That sounds strange, but there are so many vending machines, gadgets, ticket machines, driverless cars, in-car entertainment.
Driverless cars.
They have embedded SIM cards, so there already are more machines. The difference is those machines are not self-aware. Very few of those machines can get up and make the coffee for you. They sit there quietly humming away. So a strong prediction is that robotics and AI will take that process further, that these machines will become more useful to our societies and add a lot of value. And certainly the predictions for economic growth is that's probably a required step as our technology becomes more available and societies become more sophisticated in their needs. And the ability for robotics, AI, and of course 5G to solve a lot of fundamental underlying challenges in society today.
The control you need of these devices is actually more important than actually the connectivity. So you have to actually be able to take instant control, especially for like a vehicle. If you've got an autonomous vehicle, if something happens around that vehicle, and somebody needs to take action, you need that real-time data. So the innovation of what we've done is we've created systems that support that instant access, that reliability, that quality you have to have, so that you can take that immediate control when you need to. But with robotics, as robotics takes on, robots can move much faster than humans. So in a warehouse infrastructure, you create a safe environment for the people, because the robots are in one area doing very high speed actions, collecting items, bringing them back from often very dangerous locations because they're high up, all those things. And they're bringing them to then the people to then do the processing that then send them out to their various locations they need to go to. So it's not just a case of the connectivity, it's the reliability and the speed of that connectivity and the ability to put it exactly where you want. Because everybody knows with the networks that are around at the moment, not everything is connected. So in order to actually connect everything, you have to increase the coverage. Well, the only way of increasing the coverage is to bring that infrastructure into industry, bring that into the businesses, into local authorities, to create safe networks that support all of that infrastructure. Because otherwise, gaps where we are now, and that then means you can't keep that control and that reliability and that safety, which then stops the enhancement to life, which is what ultimately you're trying to do.
Which verticals are you seeing that are adopting this technology as early adopters?
So specifically the cellular technology, as opposed to the Wi-Fi, microwave, and other point-to-point, point-to-multipoint technologies, we find a huge and wide range of applications. Everything from safe cities, smart cities, agri-tech, that's kind of like farming and extended industries, smart ports, smart docks, smart motorways, disaster recovery, border security. So there are so many applications. Telehealth is another one. And this list keeps extending. It's almost as if we've created a technology, and then people are then saying, guess what? We can also use it for, and hopefully solving some of mankind's, let's say, more pressing issues. So in fact, adding to that and winding almost back to the start is, what was our mission? And we often reflect on this as a technology company based in the UK. What is our ultimate mission? I believe it has to be encompassed in the fewest words. It has to be doing good in the world, as in the technology has to be doing things which benefit mankind, benefit our species, benefit the planet, benefit the entire ecosystem we're in. And that might sound a very grand claim, but if we then drill down to what we're doing today on an everyday basis, we need to make sure that our products can do that. They can provide better connectivity than the previous chapter, and certainly our ancestors had. They can improve healthcare. They can improve food production efficiency, make sure crops are tended in a responsible manner, reducing water consumption in water-scarce regions, making sure cities are safer, cleaner, clean transport. So many of these topics come together, and we find that private 5G and its successors like 6G, which we're coming up to next, will be essential components. In fact, linking to what you were saying earlier, David, a very key point in robotics is a robot can be very clever, intelligent, but you can't do all of the processing on the robot. So the inferencing, the deep knowledge is often done in server racks that are either held on-premise in a building or possibly in some cloud server elsewhere in your country or elsewhere on the planet. So the robot has finite weight and power abilities. So therefore, putting some of the inferencing and the heavy compute separate from the robot is obviously essential.
Reduce costs to the robot as well.
And cost?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have fleets of robots going around factories, that's absolutely right. So therefore, private cellular is the right answer because it has the highest security, full mobility, no dropouts. You can do all the things that you can't do with Wi-Fi. With all respect to Wi-Fi, we too make some Wi-Fi products. So we can compare those very interestingly. So private cellular offers the ultimate security, availability, low latency, and scalability. That you can have thousands or millions of robots running around doing their jobs without consequence.
It makes work safer as well. Especially when we look at things like construction, mining, smart ports, things like that, where you've got heavy machinery. And, ideally, if you've got a device that weighs several hundred tons, the last thing you want is to have a person underneath it controlling it by a stick control, which is how a lot of things were done originally. Now, if you can automate that, or you can actually put that somebody sat in a control center, they've got real-time control over that, especially on like a container ship where you could have containers with, tons of materials in. They need to lift that up, bring it off the ship and put it onto a truck. If you've automated that process and, all the people are actually in a nice, safe environment, air conditioned, all those things, it makes it safer for everybody, and it makes them all more beneficial in the fact that they've got more awake workers. They're not suffering from excessive heat or work. All those things can be taken out, so you can reduce health and safety budgets, and you can make workplaces much safer and create environments that are better for working in, which ultimately increases the productivity, because if you have happy workers that feel comfortable, and they will do more work, they will achieve more. So it's not just the control, it's actually putting people in control in the right places rather than putting them at risk. Certainly with like cranes on construction sites, if you're 100 meters up on a crane, that's an incredibly dangerous place to be. But if you can,
and mining and energy production, things like even the older energy like oil and gas, they're quite actually hazardous environments. So being able to transport people into a safer environment, a cleaner, more pleasant environment, is good for humans, good for productivity, good for the overall planet, I'd hope.
How easy is it for to access this solution? I was going to say, to access this solution. I sit here and I think, 5G, private 5G, there's a lot of, technology chat around it, but, trying to look at it from a commercial perspective, if I'm the IT manager, how easy is it for me to
We've innovated to do that. So the innovations we've done is we've made it a simpler way of management. We've taken complexity out of 5G, and this was essential for the private 5G market, because, a lot of people haven't been in that industry before, haven't done an awful lot of wireless, and the most wireless people would have done is the OFDM MIMO wireless, the Wi-Fi. So what we've done is create interfacing that's very similar to make it more friendly, more easy to access, and then we've simplified control. So by adding, control panes that allow you to effectively do the basics, put my license on there, the location, things like that, and then it goes away and does complex script stuff behind the scenes. So what we've done is actually simplify that interface. Now, that's not to say that if a user wants, or a network manager wants to go down to that level, they can do. That's always been available. But what we've done is we've tried to make it quick and easy for them to deploy. And the other thing is our pre-configuration services, where we actually get things ready to deploy. So literally you turn up, you put them on, turn them on, and they're running straight away. So, our typical time to, being up and running, if you buy a solution, you install it on that day. By the end of that day, you can have that entire system up and running and live and operational within that day, which is unique in the industry in terms of, that could be as small or large as you want it to be.
And it's a major achievement. Thank you, David. So the idea in the cellular industry that even 5 or 10 years ago, a mobile network was a very complex thing. You need hundreds of engineers to bring it up and manage it and keep it running. And across the whole country, that's quite reasonable to have one of the major mobile operators with hundreds of staff. But if you are running a private cellular network, it's probably going to be on one person or a small team. To keep that network running, to upgrade it over its lifespan, add new things, add new features. So the engineering effort to make sure the product is easy to deploy, scalable, you can see what it's doing at a glance. Any glitches or capacity issues or additions people want to make, moves and changes, can be done quickly and instantly. It needs to be trouble-free, otherwise we kind of detract from our goal there of making the world a better place.
And the NMS has been developed specifically in that mind. So not only will it monitor your system, and we have a native Android app already, and we will do other apps later on. What we've done that for is so that if you are the single person running a network, you could be dealing with 10 or 20 different bespoke systems for your business. At least this one, you can pick up your phone and go on there and see instantly what's going on with that, with your network. So you've taken away all that pain and fear of, is it working? Is it right? Is there a problem? but also you've given them a tool that when they do need to upgrade or need more capacity, they can turn around and say, look, these are the trends. This is the trend. And they can do that in a boardroom with the senior management team and go, look, this is where we are today. And this is why we need this technology, and we can go further. So people come back to us to then upgrade later. And this is the sort of pay-as-you-grow approach, where somebody can start off with one site, and then they come back to us and go, that site's doing so well, I need another 3. And they could just add it in. And it's just a natural add-on to what they're doing. And this is where customers like our approach being bespoke, is that they can go, I need to start with one site. I can only do one site. That's all I've got the funding for. But later on, they can come back and say, well, now I actually want to do 100 sites, and they'll get 100 sites very easily.
It's fully scalable. Other vendors who've done this in the past have come on with very complex, expensive cores. So the day one cost is enormous and very off-putting. So only a large site or a large organization would consider that. What we've got here is a solution which will scale from a single indoor cell, a tiny compact core, and you can grow from there. And it means that you're not wasting equipment, that the equipment used on day one becomes then part of a much larger solution. And the other reason that's relevant is when you deploy private 5G, although there may be a primary mission in mind, it may be this is about safety, it's about security or efficiency. What we find is people will then add other layers. They'll say, oh, we can add IoT, we can put cameras. Oh, now we can add more functionality. We can have handheld tablets, we can push to talk radios, we can increase our staff's productivity, but also their safety, security, and comfort in the process. So the network is going to grow over time. The use case will expand, and that's a phenomenal achievement to make sure that your infrastructure, which you're paying for once, can expand and add more functionality and usability as it goes.
And because we use software behind a lot of the actual application itself, so although it's frequency specific, the actual application behind it can be upgraded. So this means we can meet all of the latest standards. So we're currently release 18 today. If somebody then wants release 19 later, it is a software update. So you haven't got the visit to site. You haven't got to take the equipment down to do a rip out and replace. Literally, it is a remote install, and you're up to the latest features. So, and that's massive in this industry because
we should take that brief moment actually to reflect on that, which is these radios are actually designed and manufactured here in Oxford in the UK. So it is actually a British product, which we're very proud of for that achievement. That many people look at the cellular industry, they'll assume things were either made in the Nordic countries or they were made in China, and the large amount of the map is kind of absent of. Actually, the British tech industry in the past has been phenomenal, and certain segments now are very strong. But we've strongly decided to put the UK and Oxford on the map as a place of excellence. So the products we've designed here are not only world class, but they're distinctive. And as you mentioned, Dave, they are fully software upgradable. You can take a radio from 4G, 5G, and now even 6G with pure software upgrades. That means no rip outs, no scrap, no replacing, no visit to site. You can do that remotely over a remote session using the management solution. And that means that customers can invest in the solution, knowing that's going to be good for the next 5, 10, 15 years ahead. And another reason that's significant is that 5G is moving so fast. If we compare it to the earlier versions of cellular, like 2G, for example, GSM, you would buy a phone, make phone calls, then they could have SMS. And then there was 2.5 years. That took years and years and years. With 5G, we're finding the rate of progress is staggering. So there are new features, there's IoT, there's slicing, there are mission-critical push-to-talk. There are new features and applications being built all the time, which have global impact. So the fact our product can do that with software upgrades alone gives customers and the end users far greater benefit from the capex, the spend in equipment. This solution can grow over time as well as over the space they're covering.
Are you finding that your innovation is now being created by your customers?
That's a very good question. So as a technology business, we listen very strongly to our customers. I would say that probably that the greater proportion of innovations are driven by customer demands and requests. We listen very carefully to what customers are experiencing, what their desires are, their peeves, things they don't like, things they really want to achieve, experiences they've had with other products, solutions, technologies. So those will deeply inform what we do on our own innovation curve. Another thing we do is make sure our technology set is scalable and expandable. So any innovation that takes place will immediately become available across the whole range of radios. And that is quite unique. I think we're unique amongst vendors of doing that. So if we, for example, update our management system, that update is available across the whole range of radios, all frequency bands, and even the 4G radios. So a customer who's bought 4G technology can still have fresh new updates, whereas other vendors have kind of like stopped innovating in 4G and left their products to go a little stale. Our products are kept up to date and fresh in that manner.
And I'd say the other thing that we've responded to with customers is aesthetics and things like that. So, we've all driven down the road in any of the major town cities, and on top of buildings, you see these big white sectors, these radio and all these black cables and things like that. And it brings us onto our solution stack, where what we've done is we've gone, okay, in our solution stack, what should we have? So we have that. There is a place for that. But there is also a place for putting in something that's aesthetically pleasing. And we've got the CableFree Smart Pod here, which is literally next to you there. Now, that was designed purposely to hide infrastructure, to make it look aesthetically pleasing, and to merge it into street furniture so that you could put this in dense deployment scenarios. So for, automated vehicles, for instance, these are used already for automated vehicles. So you have complete control, complete coverage over an entire area of a route, and you're not reliant on any other service. You have total control. But you don't have the issue of having all of these towers and these big expensive boxes. You literally have a radio with everything that it needs in it on that pole. And that's really, really powerful in today's market. The other thing that we did is we turned around and said to the customers, if you want to add extra features, if you want Wi-Fi for the digital divide, you want to add pollution monitoring, noise monitoring, all those sorts of services that every city now is starting to look at and towns are following suit, you can add all of that within that device. So we added some edge compute to it as well. So suddenly what you've got is you've got the ability for somebody running a site or running an entire city to put these in and have a city-wide view of noise, pollution, traffic, all those things, as well as providing possibly fixed wireless access services, automated vehicles, so automated buses, automated taxis. You could have, the police using body cameras, monitoring with that. You could have all sorts of services all running through this infrastructure that is all low power consumption is part of what we've built. So everything is designed to fit into that envelope of, would I be happy to see it outside my house? Most people don't even notice that they're there.
So this one, Dave, is the grey wrap. These are also available in any colour you'd like. So unlike Henry Ford, who said any colour as long as it's black, we're saying literally any colour. So this could be even wood textured, wood coloured. It could sit on top of a telegraph pole and just vanish into a cityscape. It could be stuck in a pine forest for holiday parks and rural locations, providing connectivity. It could literally blend into the background of anything.
We put it on the side of buildings, so you literally have a wrap that is this. You take a photo of the side of the building, have it printed and wrapped on there, put it on the side of the building. Looking from the ground, you probably wouldn't notice it unless there was a light specifically shining on it to actually show it.
And this is available in two versions, isn't it? There's the in the ground, the smart pole, which goes into the pavement, and also the smart pod that goes on the side of existing infrastructure, because not every city wants to dig the pavements up again. In fact, this is against most cities. So using existing street furniture is advantageous.
But then as they replace their street furniture, they could replace them with the poles. And the advantage of replacing them with the poles is then you can add extra services as well. Things like EV charging. This is a big topic now with everybody moving over to economical vehicles, ecologically sound vehicles, things like that. This will follow that innovation and follow that structure. So we haven't thought, what are we doing this year? We've actually thought about the next 5 or 10 years in terms of innovation. What are people going to need? What's going to happen? Now, we know that all the street furniture gets replenished over a period of time. So why not have a product that can be used on the side of that for now or on top of it that later can be replaced and then give you that solution as a single solution? And what we did with that is we also designed it that you don't necessarily need to have a crane to put it in. It can actually be done. You can actually bring it down to the ground work on it, and then put it back up. So again, making it safer for the engineers, reducing that need for specialist equipment, all those side of things.
Fabulous. So he's touched on technology for good, making the world safer, cleaner, better, increasing efficiency, lowering power consumption, lowering pollution, and making sure that the future for the next generations is hopefully even better than that which we enjoyed today. Should we take a break? I think it's time for a break.
And time for cake.
We'll catch up more. Thank you.